Tyson pops up last week with a video. Is it the return of the proverbial bad smell or the prodigal son? But Fury's just got paid 75 million quid for fighting Usyk and 30 million quid for fighting Ngannou. He's not getting in the ring with Joshua for 25 million quid, is he?
We're talking about eras, modern legacies, and Fury wanting to be recognised as one of the best names out there.
Past their sell-by date, possibly, but still in an immense event that's going to generate significant money, certainly enough for them to be happy with.
I don't think it was a low blow.
Usyk 6'3", and a 14 stone 4 fighter. That's what he is.
Is he?
He's a cruiserweight.
Oh yeah, naturally. But he's bigger now, isn't he?
Artificially bigger to make the big money fights.
I think Crawford wins this fight.
He signed a contract. He knew the terms.
We can't
about this rehydration clause. So if you affect somebody's ability to be healthy in a combat sport and you want to insert that into a contract, I've got a problem with you wanting to insert that into a contract.
My understanding is that the condition was if you accept the rehydration clause, you get $1 million for doing that, right? And then you said to me, well, it doesn't make that much difference, to be honest, because the damage has been done prior to that. How does he compare to David Haye?
Not as quick, it's heavier, definitely. I've got experience with both of them in fights and in the gym. I like them both. They're both. I see them both potentially getting hurt in this fight.
Welcome to episode 119 of Talk Boxing with Simon Jordan and Spencer Oliver. Joining us today is one of the boxing's top trainers, Adam Booth. Nice to see you. Thanks for joining us. Here's a fun fact for you. Did you know that myself and Adam went to the same school?
Yeah, I did actually.
You do know what school is, don't you, Spence?
No, I don't know what school it was, no. But I think that we've had that conversation before.
Indeed we did. Anyway, listen, let's move on to the announcement or the potential announcement or the usual fare of whenever there's a big announcement, Tyson Fury pops up and says something different or garners some attention. So Tyson pops up last week with a video. Is it the return of the proverbial bad smell or the prodigal son, but the potential of Tyson Fury coming out of retirement?
Yeah, I think it was always going to happen. I think we always believed it was going to happen, and what timing that is to announce it when Oleksandr Usyk and Daniel Dubois gets announced. Tyson Fury was always going to make this announcement, wasn't he? I mean, we've said from day dot, we don't think it's the last we see of him. I don't know what you think, Adam, but we see him in the ring again.
You're a long time retired, and although he's not a spring chicken, he's not an old man, and he has his health.
Yeah.
So when you look at British boxing, especially now, and these huge events and these atmospheres and the money, when you're walking away from it completely healthy, there's got to be a pull. And obviously after a long training camp and difficult fights, you walk away and think, well, I've had enough of that, that's all too hard. But you forget the pain, and then you start to look at the glory and everything that's involved in having a career in your prime, and you think, okay, well, I still feel good and I still want to be.
Is it exciting to think of him coming back? Is it something that you find particularly appealing?
Depends who he fights.
Yeah.
For me, depends who he fights. I'm not actually interested in seeing him fight Usyk again. I think we've seen that fight play out enough. In a strange way, like we're going to get Bivol and Beterbiev again.
Yep.
And one will get the decision, but the fight is going to be exactly the same every round as the previous ones.
But that's a series of fights that's 1-1, so there is a real call to action.
I understand, but if you take away the decision and you look at the fight, you kind of know what the fight's going to look like. The same with Usyk and Tyson.
Yep.
But I think there's fights out there for Tyson where we don't know what the result's going to look like or how it's going to play out. And I think for me, that's going to be the interesting thing.
Now, the lustre around the iconography of him being an undefeated fighter that was going to dominate the division and fight 10 fights and disappear into the ether has gone. So where do you think his motivation is coming from?
His motivation comes on now legacies and life without boxing, as Adam has just highlighted there, becomes very difficult, and you soon forget about the hard training and what it is, and you need that back in your life. Tyson Fury, has suffered with mental health problems outside of boxing. I think boxing gives him that straight and narrow, keeps him focused, keeps him on that direction, and I think there's still huge fights out there for him. We're talking about, Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, massive fight out there. Tyson Fury versus Daniel Dubois, massive fights out there for him still. So that's where the motivation comes from. I think we're talking about eras, modern legacies, and Fury wanting to be recognised as one of the best names out there.
But isn't it slightly more simpler than that? Isn't it just an opportunity for the economic returns that maybe he might get from the Anthony Joshua fight
No, I don't think it is. No, I think this is
So
all
he's
about...
going to do it for a charity then?
No, he's not going to do it for a charity. Obviously, he's going to get well rewarded for that. But we're talking about, you know, you've got to remember that Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury, people talking about this fight now being for money because there's no belts on the line. But, you know...
The battle of the two losers, as I described rather mean-spiritedly.
I think that's unfair because I think when you look at these two, look, you know, on merit,
it's also factual.
No, but Simon, on merit, they both deserved that. They both deserved this fight on what they've achieved in the past. They're both two-time world heavyweight champions. It's still a huge fight. The British public, it goes outside of your hardcore boxing fan. It draws the casual fan in that dips their toe in and out of water every so often. They're still two of the biggest names in British boxing, and for me, I think for boxing, for themselves, you know...
Well, you might not like it, but when you've got Usyk and Dubois, who are the two winners fighting, it's natural to say if Fury fights Joshua, these are the two losers. It doesn't mean that they are losers full stop.
Am I right in saying that Usyk versus Dubois... Usyk, Dubois, Anthony Joshua, Tyson Fury, what's the biggest draw?
Well, let me go back a sec, because you've got grade and you've got entertainment.
Yep.
And the last couple of weekends have really shown us that. Benn and Eubank, not the best in their world, not the best in the world in their divisions, respectively.
Yep.
One of them not in his prime.
Yep.
One of them hasn't evolved into his prime.
Hallelujah.
Served up the biggest drama because one of them wasn't big enough to hurt and drop one, and the other one was the big fella whose legs weren't working, so just had to go inside and have a trade up. And we got served up some dramatic entertainment. We've been in boxing for years, but I was like a fan watching that play out, and the theatre with the dads. So there you didn't have the grade, but you had the pure entertainment. The next weekend, you had all the grade you could possibly want, and probably just as well that it was at 6 a.m. because it was easy to fall asleep.
Yeah.
And so this plays into the answer to your question. They're two losers. Yes, okay, they're coming off the losses, but they are former world heavyweight champions.
Indeed, they are.
The biggest names in world boxing, not just British boxing.
Yeah.
And if AJ and Fury were to get announced, I 100% would be interested in seeing how that fight plays out. They may not be in their prime, but I still think...
But it falls into the entertainment
narrative. And I do think that the fight itself would give the entertainment.
Do you think that, that there's a reality behind this fight? Because I discussed it with Frank, I discussed it with Turki Al-Sheikh about the scale of this fight. Because once upon a time, this fight we were told that this fight had to generate 150 million quid for each fighter, right? Or something of that nature. And pay-per-view prices had to be at a certain level to be able to facilitate this fictitious fucking 150 million quid that each one of these fighters had to have. And I kind of bristled at it. But we're now at a stage where, how are you going to get there? I don't think the Saudis want to spend 150 million quid. The fight in and of itself goes to Wembley, right? Gets 90,000 people. Agreed. 90,000 people gives you 15 million quid out of gate receipts. You might get 1.2 million pay-per-views. And don't forget, we're talking about Benn Eubank, which is unprecedented success, getting 600,000 pay-per-views. So let's double that just for the purposes of this conversation. That's 30 million quid. Where's the other 100-odd million quid going to come in to be able to generate the revenue unless the Saudis pick it up and drag it to Riyadh? And I'm not entirely sure there's much of an appetite for that.
I think they pick it up and put it in Wembley Stadium. I think that Riyadh season would want to be... No, but I'm saying they want to be involved in it. Turki Al-Sheikh would want to be involved in that, and that's where the extra money comes from.
Let's agree with that, right? So you reckon they're going to pay somewhere... You're not going to get Fury and Joshua. You might get Joshua in there, but if Fury just got paid 75 million quid for fighting Usyk and 30 million quid for fighting Ngannou, he's not getting in the ring with Joshua for 25 million quid, is he?
I think it generates more money than that anyway. I think it generates more money than that.
But without that,
from pay-per-view sales and whatnot. I still think it's a huge fight.
Numerically,
outside of
I just gave you the numbers.
But yeah, numerically, you're absolutely right. Numerically, you're right. There is, and basically, that's where the fight has to create its own value.
Yeah.
The problem with the disproportionate money that's been paid of recent times is that it's giving these people... Yeah, I mean, everyone's hoarding on it. They're hoarding on it. But eventually that's going to settle down, then the reality kicks in. And the bottom line is that both of them aren't in their prime, but if they both want to do it, it's not going to be for the money. They both have enough money never to have to do anything again.
Agreed.
And their subsequent generations will never have to work. So, although they're going to get...
Although you can spend 100 million quid, I'm living proof of that.
Just don't buy a football club.
But the money isn't the reason. The money isn't the reason to make the fight. The reason to make the fight now is, over the years, they probably both overplayed their positions when talking about making that fight. There was always a bit of one-upmanship that one had the advantage, then the other had the advantage at the negotiating table. But while that was going on, they were still making this phenomenal amount of money elsewhere.
Yeah.
Okay, well now that well has dried up a little bit and we're left talking about, are they going to fight? Past their sell-by date, possibly, but still in an immense event that's going to generate significant money, certainly enough for them to be happy with, and go and have more experience, develop your legacy, and actually see, were you the better one or was he?
Oh, it'll be fascinating. But listen, someone who spoke about it last week on the lineup, or this week on the lineup, I should say, is Tony Bellew. Let's have a listen to what he had to say about the Fury-Joshua fight.
Just a big part of me has to understand, and I need to see Tyson Fury back in there, because if Tyson Fury's back for just money, that will show up on the fight night.
We will look like John Fury.
That will show up on fight night. Whichever way you want to say, whether he's in shape or not, if he's back just for money, then it will show. If he's back for legacy, that's a different thing. That's a different animal you're dealing with.
No, I hear it.
That's a hungry fighter, and that's a dangerous fighter.
Insofar as the fight, if we are creating this outcome that we believe that's going to happen, right, based upon Fury popping his head above the parapet and delighting us all with his wonderful presence when it's about other people at the time, can you make a case for Joshua beating Fury? You can, because you're part of his bleeding.
Are you firing that question?
Yeah, I'll ask Adam. I might get a more balanced answer. Actually, sorry about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, you can.
Yeah, you can make it. I could explain how either of them can win that fight.
Well, go ahead then.
Well, Tyson Fury is very good at not giving away opportunity. He can box very carefully, and with his freakishly long arms and short torso and height advantage, and the fact that he moves, he doesn't actually move with perfect balance, but he moves and he throws his fists out. And he's a nightmare, really difficult to try and get to when he's being in that, not safety first, but certainly boxing where he's hitting and he's giving you minimal opportunity to get in. AJ, on the other hand, when he stands there, gives you a lot of opportunity to land on him. But I think what AJ needs to be is a combination of aggressive and clever with that aggression. You can't go on the line. Yeah. He's got to use his legs and his head movement to get at him explosively and take advantage. If you try and get in and then punch, Tyson's going to tie you up. If you stand on the outside and wait for the opportunity, you're just going to get your head flicked off all night long and pinged. What he has to do, what AJ has to do, is be aggressive with his legs and his head movement and punch as he goes in to eventually end up spinning the coin with Tyson. That's your chance with Tyson of catching him when he's looking to catch you. Before he goes or after he goes, he'll tie you up and mess you around. But with Tyson, if he settles AJ down, if AJ does get aggressive and he uses his ring IQ and his experience and his movement and all these little moments where you choose things to settle him down and just pick his spots to take advantage of it, you could see how he could win. And I actually don't think the fight, either way, I don't think the fight goes the distance.
Do we, to close this section off, do we see Tyson Fury winning another world title?
I think it's definitely possible, yeah, of course. With the landscape of heavyweight boxing and with what's going on, you don't know what's going to happen with Oleksandr. They're all in that twilight of their career now where you don't know how long they're going to continue, and it depends on how Tyson Fury comes back, how he looks coming back, and the opportunity that arises.
How long ago did he lose a very close decision to Usyk? How long ago was that?
4 months.
Yeah,
4 months.
Yeah, I'm even getting caught up in talking about the fact that Tyson Fury is now yesterday's news. The only reason why we're talking about him being yesterday's news is that he announced his retirement.
He keeps on fanning about.
If he hadn't announced his retirement, we wouldn't be phrasing it like this. He lost a very close decision to the best in the world 4 months ago. So absolutely, he could win a world title again.
Okay, well, fascinating. We'll wait and see. Let's move on to, I think, the biggest fight in boxing right now, which is the undisputed heavyweight championship between Usyk and Dubois. We had both of them in the studio last week. Both of them are very impressive for different reasons. How do you see this one, Adam, playing out?
Different to the first one. I can make much more of an argument for Dubois in this fight.
Me too.
Firstly, because he actually had success in the first fight.
He did. Do you think it was a low blow?
No.
No.
Oh, sorry. Yes.
You do think it was a low blow?
Absolutely was. If you look,
you do?
Yeah, I do. Yeah, sorry. You caught me out then with the question. If you watch, it lands low, and while it's got contact with the shorts, it actually rides up at the point of impact.
So I've no use to my argument.
But it's irrelevant because they're going to fight again. Yeah. Usyk won the first time, and as he said, he won by stoppage. But Daniel Dubois is a different fighter now. Fighting is 90% mental. and he is a completely different fighter mentally. He lets his hands go with freedom. He now trusts his engine because he had those rounds with Jarrell Miller that tested his engine. Yeah. So he's kind of ticked the little boxes along the way, old school style. Mm-hmm. He's a much better fighter now than the one that fought Usyk the first time. Usyk is a more experienced heavyweight now than he was in the first fight, but I'm not sure he's necessarily a better fighter because he was already fully accomplished back then. Yeah. So for me, it's a much closer fight. Now in a rematch, the smart thing to do is always go with who won the first fight. Yep. If you've got to put your house on it, choose that. Secondly, we're talking about Usyk. So if you force me, I would say, okay, well, if I got to do it, I'll go Usyk. But if you gave me the freedom of expression, there's a lot for me to say, actually, you know what? Dubois is actually a good bet on this one.
Talking about the mental approach, let's listen to what the Dubois team are doing in their approach to this fight, specifically perhaps Don Charles.
You know you were hurt, because I heard what you said. You know.
It's your opinion.
No. It's your opinion. No, it's my opinion. Yeah. It's your reality.
Not my reality.
Got your minute of fame.
Stop. It's my time.
The referee went, and then you went. And then he said,
See you 18, July. Maybe 19 July.
The acting you did that night, you've heard of the Oscars, right? The Emmys. You should be given an Oscar.
I win this fight for right my hand, like a jab. Bam! Enough.
Nobody's denying that, but thou shall not cheat.
Left sit.
It's going to be a bloodbath. I want to just put all the controversy and all of that nonsense to rest and show that I'm a man of the future. On the ring, on the night, he'll be doing a funny dance in the ring when I hit him.
Kingslayer.
Spence, they're pulling at the low blow, Fred. I'm not sure that it has as much merit as they might think it has. What do you think of their strategy?
Well, I think that's really all they've got to go on, is that low blow. I don't think it was a low blow personally. I think it was a legit shot. And Oleksandr Usyk done what an experienced guy would do. He went down and stayed down there. The referee gave him that allowance, so why not? That's what he's going to do. That's the game that we're in. But they're clutching, obviously, Don Charles and the team, and George Fox's son there, we saw that. They're just trying to get into the head of Oleksandr Usyk, but Usyk's not that guy. You can't break him that way.
I don't see Usyk biting on this. I don't think he cares. He keeps on talking about that's in the past. It's the here and now. Do you see any bites on it?
Listen, he's well-travelled, Usyk. He's been in every guy's backyard. He knows what it is. He knows the game inside out. No, he's not biting on that. That's the point. I agree with Adam in so many ways that now Daniel Dubois is a totally different animal to the first guy he boxed. Oleksandr Usyk maybe isn't that different guy, but he has the ability to adapt and change things and change it up a level. It's whether Daniel Dubois can go with it as well. But it's a different fight.
Does this sell out Wembley, Adam? Because I made a point that I felt that Usyk Dubois, despite the fact that this is a real fight, this is not narrative created, this is two heavyweight champions that are at the peak of their powers fighting for a world title. I made the point that I thought, this might struggle to sell out Wembley. I know Frank will not have that and say they've sold 60,000 instantaneously. Do you think it's a sellout?
Here's the funny thing about boxing as it is now. We're talking about, but will this really sell out Wembley Stadium? Go back to Wembley Stadium when Bruno fought for the World Heavyweight title. Absolutely. And look at the crowd then. Absolutely. How many did that sell? 30?
Absolutely.
Okay, so put it this way.
We've raised the bar.
It's going to sell more than enough for everyone to be happy with their share of the pie.
When we were in last week, we were talking to Frank Warren and Don Charles about the two fights that Usyk has had with Tyson Fury and those 24 rounds and the potential impact it might have had on Usyk. Because there was a school of thought, I know that the Fury camp wanted to put this school of thought out there. I think after the first fight, I think Frank did it, was that Usyk was in worse shape after the fight than Tyson Fury was. Do you see any legs in that particular narrative about how much of a war he's been in the last two fights with Tyson Fury?
No, because I don't think they were physical wars. I think they were technical wars and energetic wars. Remember, he is naturally the smaller man. Yeah. So by definition, he has to do more just to have a level playing field. So he has to do that much more to get ahead. So I just think that they are these are physically monumental challenges for Usyk because he is so much smaller naturally. Technically, he's got the game, but these heavyweights are big, dangerous guys. And, you know, was Usyk 6'3"? and a 14 stone 4 fighter. That's what he is.
Is he?
He's a cruiserweight.
Oh yeah,
200
naturally.
pounds. Naturally.
But he's bigger now, isn't he?
Artificially bigger to make the big money fights. So, you know, like Dubois in the first fight gave him trouble.
Yeah.
Because he just applied his size on him. Look at the 2 AJ fights. The first fight, I thought Usyk won it a canter. The second fight, all AJ did differently was that you tried to apply himself a bit more physically and attack the body a bit more. And you saw that it took more out of Usyk energetically to get the same result. And I see a similar thing happening with Dubois, that if he just goes out there and just if he forgets who he's fighting, has no respect for the man, applies his size and just lets his hands go, and every time Usyk gets clever with him, just keeps going forward and throwing his hands, his size and his natural size advantage and power is going to ask a lot of questions.
I think Daniel's capable of doing that. Because I think ultimately, despite the fact he's got the baggage of having lost the first fight, they've got their little narrative about the fact they didn't lose it because they got the low blow. He walked into an arena with 96,000 people wanting to anoint Anthony Joshua and didn't blink. So if they can convince him that there's nothing to worry about for Usyk, the first result was not anything for them to consider, he will be able to blank out the mentality of who he's fighting.
Do you not think sorry.
No,
do you not think they're doing Daniel a disservice by doing this low blow narrative? Because you lost by stoppage, but and I would, if I was with him, I'd be a realist. Said you lost by stoppage, but you are a completely different animal now. And he hasn't fought the Daniel Dubois that you are now. Go and do your thing.
You look at that Oleksandr Usyk loss and you go, that can be a moulding with a lot of fighters. And I think that he got a lot of self-belief from that loss, Daniel Dubois. And then you look at the Miller and the Hrgovic and the Anthony Joshua victories. This kid is a different animal psychologically. He's got the physicalities anyway to win the fight.
Absolutely.
He's big, he's strong, he's explosive. You know, he's one of those heavyweights that he's light on his feet.
Spence, what was everyone saying about Daniel after he took a knee against Joe Joyce? Would you have ever considered that we'd be talking about...
Especially your old mate.
Would, at that moment in time, could we have conceived that he would become potentially the #1 heavyweight and be talking about him taking the unified title?
Absolutely right. What have you made of Joe Parker's re-emergence? Do you attribute a lot of that to Andy Lee?
I do, yeah. I think that they have a fantastic relationship. I was talking to Andy recently because the way that I see their relationship is similar to the one that Andy and I developed. When Andy first came to me, I remember looking at him thinking, I don't know what I can do with this guy. Like he looked like a stiff, upright southpaw who lost for the world title, so his confidence was low. But because I got on so well with him and I enjoyed his company so much that over the years we evolved this relationship and he ended up having the success that he did. And I see the similarities that they're very, very well connected.
Because it was always there with Joe Parker. The ability was always there. The accusation was he didn't let his hands go enough.
He didn't have what Andy Lee has is experience of doing it to the highest level, winning fights where he was a massive underdog against, having been with Emmanuel Stewart and lived with Emmanuel Stewart for so many years. Learned my way of training as well. He's got all of this knowledge and the ability to articulate it and not over-articulate it. Because as a coach, the most important thing is what you don't say. And I think Andy simplifies the complex and the understanding of the little nuances really well. And Joseph Parker obviously has the IQ and the intellect to absorb it and use it.
Where are you on the one I mentioned a moment ago that I really like, which is Caballero? Where are you on him?
I'm really impressed with him. He's an old school heavyweight. He's tough. He might not be, if you put him in a gym and you said, do a bench press, if you did these static measurements of him, he may not come out that well. He might not be able to jump the highest, press the most, but he can fight. And he's got that toughness and that resilience that you cannot get in a controlled environment. I was really impressed with his last win against Zhang because he was hurt. And it's the first time I'd seen him hurt. And he kept his composure and turned it around the right way. Any heavyweight that can make you work, recover, deal with the power that you put on him and keep serving it back up, he's going to be a nightmare for anyone.
Frank Sanchez, the performance he put in against Sanchez as well, who's totally different. He's not that big, strong guy that can whack the way he does. He's got a lot of movement and he's slick and he worked that out, figured that out, attacks to the body. I think that Caballero is the most dangerous heavyweight out there right now.
So do I, right now. I mean, obviously we've been campaigning for Bacoli and we'll talk about him perhaps, but just going back to Caballero and a fighter that I think I know that you like, how do you think he would fare against Lawrence Okolie? And what do you make of Lawrence Okolie as a heavyweight now?
Well, Lawrence is clever, big, awkward, can whack, and he has some good experience. So as a heavyweight, he's got the frame for it. So as a heavyweight, absolutely, like you have to put him in the mix. And how lucky are we that we've almost got too many heavyweights to talk about that we can put in the mix, and he definitely fits into that conversation.
Would you pick Cabello to beat Okolie?
That's a hard question. With what we've seen up until now, yes, because Lawrence still has to prove himself at a level at heavyweight. So at this moment in time, yes, but that doesn't mean that Lawrence won't go and prove himself.
Yeah. Fascinating. We'll wait and see. So, another big weekend of boxing. Albeit, if I'm being mean-spirited, an easy night's work for Canelo and a bit of a snore fest in Riyadh.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes,
Listen,
no?
I totally agree with that. Like William Skull, for me, he
Conor
won.
Benn's sparring partner.
Yeah, absolutely. But he won the IBF title because it was a title that was vacated by Canelo, and he gets this opportunity for the undisputed super middleweight championship. You go, you have to take that opportunity. It was too negative. He didn't want to get involved. It was like he just wanted to survive and be a part of the event, as opposed to wanting to win the fight. It was a poor performance, and for Canelo, he was sort of like going through the motions. We didn't see enough from him, single shots here and there. I go like, I want to see more. You've got to show us a little more than that. With the Canelo of old, we see him putting the shots together in threes and fours. I think when you get to 34 years of age and you turn pro at 15, it does take its toll, and he's adapted his style. And those single shots now are not the Canelo of old, and I think that we expected more from him. I know that when you're boxing a negative fighter, it's very difficult to look good against Adam, but we expected more still from Canelo.
Yeah, but let's not get stuck into Skull too much, right? He did what he had to do. I actually thought Skull won quite a few of the early rounds because Canelo just wasn't doing anything. Yeah. He looked disinterested, disengaged, and he actually looked a little bit older in that fight, especially if you look round the back of his... Absolutely, yeah. Like under arousal will give underperformance, right? So but on balance, you have to say, all right, well, I don't like what Skull is doing here, so I want to give the rounds to Canelo, and I think that played out. I do think Canelo won it in that last portion of the fight where he kind of got a bit more angry and asserted himself, and so the way that Skull went about the job was uninteresting for anyone watching. And so I think the right man won, but just a terrible fight.
We expected more from Canelo. Let's be fair. You're talking about this guy as the generational great that he is, and you can't take that away from him. The 20 title defences that he's had, moving through the weight divisions and everything else.
But you've got to be judged.
You expect
you're
more.
getting paid a lot of money. It's a big name. You've got to be judged on each individual performance. We can't live in the past.
But he said afterwards, didn't he? He said it was a horrible fight.
He's got the W, so that's all that really matters, isn't it? And that moves him on to September with the big fight against Crawford. How do you feel about Crawford stepping up to 168? Is this a step too far for him in terms of weight classes?
Well, we'll find out when the fight happens. But if anyone is qualified to make that type of jump up, it's absolutely Terence Crawford, because he is so accomplished as a fighter and as a champion, accomplished as a champion.
But when you made the argument with Canelo when he stepped up and fought Bivol?
No, but I think it's a slightly bigger jump up.
You like Crawford for this, don't you?
I think Crawford wins this fight, and I think going off that performance with Canelo there, I think stylistically, and when you saw them both in the ring together, you go, there's no size advantage here. Yes, one has not boxed at that weight, and that makes a huge difference. But the boxing ability, you go back to like when Ray Leonard beat Marvin Hagler, and you look at him, you get them exceptional fighters that can go through the weight divisions.
1 second though, but Crawford is 3-weight world champion.
And current 154.
Of course.
Yeah, okay. So, what's Crawford's mature, prime, natural weight? Welter? Super welter?
147, 147.
So say just under 11 stone.
Yeah.
What's Canelo's natural prime performance weight? Middleweight?
Is it? Right.
Because what was he? He was super welterweight champion.
The best version of him is at 160.
Light heavy, you could say, if Bivol and Canelo were naturally the same weight, that fight plays out differently. So, but they were good fights. Bivol won because he's got the grade, and that size advantage. So I don't think... So, yes, Canelo's going to have the body work behind him, the size advantage, the strength, but I don't think there's that much difference between the two of them in their prime.
I agree.
Now that we know that Canelo's tied up with Crawford, this must lead Chris Eubank Jr. to only one place, which is the rematch. That's already been signed and agreed with Seller, isn't it?
Yeah.
With Conor Benn. Are you up for that?
Why wouldn't you be? Okay, were you not entertained the other week?
Yeah, of course I was entertained, despite my dislike of the fight in itself. And I am allowed to say that I thought it was a brilliant fight between what I considered to be a declining super middleweight and a yet to be proven welterweight.
Yeah, but it was still a great fight. It was still a great fight. They delivered.
But the media has turned it into this super fight.
No,
it wasn't a super fight, was it?
Why was it an entertaining fight? It was an entertaining fight because
backstory.
The backstory, and because one of the fellas was slightly inhibited at fight time. And I think that's something that needs to be discussed much more, because you could see that his legs weren't working. You could see that it was so obvious that the reason why he decided to turn it into a bit of a war is because he couldn't box anymore, because his legs weren't working.
Yeah.
He was throwing a lot of shots, but nothing had any real power or snap because he didn't have it in him. And so he couldn't force his size advantage on Benn, and Benn showed balls. He stayed there and fought back.
Yeah.
So for me, it'll be interesting, because I think Conor's going to be better second time round. He's got the confidence. He now knows, all right, I can be in there and hang with this fella. But it all depends on, they keep saying he signed a contract, he knew the terms.
We can't...
About this rehydration clause and the restriction of the rehydration at the most critical time. Now, for me, anything, we're 70% water, okay? So if you affect somebody's ability to be healthy in a combat sport, and you want to insert that into a contract, I've got a problem with you wanting to insert that into a contract.
We saw the problems he had making 160, right? And people talk about him making 160 since 2019, after the James DeGale victory. And where he dropped down.
I trained him for 2 fights.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that he's clearly outgrown that now to an unhealthy position, and you go, the fight can't happen at 160. Conor Benn is coming up through the weight division, so he can't go higher. But at the same time, I think it puts a sport into disrepute if you allow that fight to happen with a guy that was so weight drained. And the reason he ended up in hospital on the Saturday night till the Monday was because of dehydration. I mean, we're in an area there, Adam, where you go, of course, from a selfish point of view, we'd love to see that rematch, but it can't be with no rehydration clause in it. And it can't be at 160.
Yeah, but you made a big point with me the other day of telling me off about the fact that because he signed a rehydration clause that paid him $1 million for doing it, right? So he got, my understanding is that the condition was if you accept the rehydration clause, you get $1 million for doing that, right? And then you said to me, well, it doesn't make that much difference, to be honest, because the damage has been done prior to that. You can't rehydrate it back up to the level anyway.
I said that to you before we witnessed what he was actually going through to make, because I didn't know how much of a struggle it was.
Last week.
I said it to you, we had the same conversation last week. And I said to you, it's because when I saw the videos that he posted himself showing the struggles that he was making, and I said, now we have a problem. Because normally, under different circumstances where he's always made 160, I go, with a £10 rehydration clause where they're weighing in the morning, it's not going to be a huge issue, him making it. But when I saw him making that, I go, now there should not be a rehydration clause because it clearly is a huge issue.
The way he made weight and what he put out there, he obviously put it out for dramatic effect.
Yes.
Right? But fighters make weight in a similar fashion all across the world.
Yeah.
The issue, and the reason why weigh-ins got put the day before was so that fighters stopped doing that type of on fight days, and that they had plenty of time to rehydrate before fight time. And now what the IBF are doing, and what we're doing in commercial contracts, is we're going back to the old days where actually, no, we're going to restrict your ability to rehydrate. I have a big problem with that. I would never work with a fighter that I thought was going to suffer from that, and I would never agree to a contract.
Nice. I think that's probably right. We had 3 big names fighting in Times Square. Ryan Garcia. He wasn't at the races, was he?
What a surprise.
Have we seen...
What a surprise.
Is this a hype job?
Well, listen, what a surprise. I mean, he's coming back from a 14-month layoff due to failed drug tests.
Drug tests, yeah.
We look at the performance and you go, what a surprise. There you go. There's the answer. The answer's just there. I thought it was a lacklustre performance. The timing was terrible. He was single shots. Rolly Romero taking nothing away from him, done what he had to do, but he is at a certain level. And with Garcia and what he had on the line with the rematch with Devin Haney, you look at that performance and you go, well, the answer's all right there. You know, we saw the performance with the performance-enhancing drugs in his system. We saw it after.
Careful.
And there you go.
Careful. You mentioned Devin Haney. I don't think it was a particularly inspiring performance against Jose Ramirez. Your takeaway from that fight, Adam?
I don't even want to talk about it. It was that bad. Like,
that's not helpful.
He looked in the first couple of rounds. He looked like his lower body belonged to someone else.
But do you know what it was? I think that he was gun shy because of the punishment that he took from Ryan Garcia in that fight, where you go like, there was some heavy shots, heavy knockdowns, and that has an effect on fighters. And I think that we clearly saw in that performance there was a kid there that didn't want to get involved, was using all the boxing ability he could do, but he was gun shy with his punches, and I put that down to the loss to Ryan Garcia.
So when I was watching it at the time, I remember in the first couple of rounds, I remember thinking that he thought he was going to behave like Sugar Ray Leonard did in the second fight with Roberto Duran, and that was how he was going to win that fight. Even the kit that he wore sort of resembled the kit that Leonard wore in that second fight. And the way he was moving was like a really poor man's version of what Ray Leonard did in that second fight, where he won the fight without fighting. Yeah. He engaged in the right moments to let his hands go, tied him up, got free, and used his legs to frustrate and win. And that was the fight that Duran quit in. Yeah, this just looked like an awful version of that, of not necessarily someone that's gun shy, but someone that doesn't want to get involved in a fight with the man that's in front of him. He wants to land his shots, not get caught, and walk away with the win. That's what it looked like to me.
Get that, yeah. I tell you, one person that didn't disappoint was Teofimo Lopez.
Yeah.
I mean, this was a good fight. This is a fighter that people say ducks people. Barboza accused him of ducking him.
Listen, he's a great performer, Lopez. He's got a little bit of everything. He can box on the back foot. He's very heavy-handed. Controls the space very well as well. Ramirez is a tough kid. Likes to come forward.
Barboza.
Barboza's a tough kid. It's hard to work out. And we saw the victory that he had over Catterall. And you just look at that and you go like, he's got good boxing IQ. And he had to be careful here, Teofimo. But I think it sets up huge fights for him.
Is the logical conclusion? I mean, he calls it out, for him to step up to 147 and fight Boots Ennis, because Boots Ennis is a top-level fighter. Very impressive in his last outcome. Is that, I mean, he's super lightweight division, he's pretty much cleaned it up now, hasn't he?
Yeah.
So is it the next step that the next fight has to be Boots Ennis?
That's the natural fight, because Boots Ennis is being talked about now as the kid. And you go for Teofimo Lopez, that's achieved so much in his career, you go like, you're looking for challenges, and that is, for me, the challenge.
Yeah, we're looking at matchups now, and if it means cross-division matchups, fine, like him and Boots Ennis, great fight. I think Lopez is a modern-day fighter where he's got the technical proficiency, but he's also a modern-day athlete. And on fight night, I was going to say Saturday, but Friday, whatever it was, I thought the way he blended sort of technically sound elements of being a martial artist and a boxer into his athleticism, whilst punching with intensity, like his opponent was. It was the one fight that kind of delivered some quality over the weekend.
There was one person that wasn't particularly impressed with the Times Square card, which was the former welterweight champion of the world, Tim Bradley. Let's have a listen to what he had to say.
That whole show was trash. All the fighters on there, they don't have the passion, bro. They don't have the desire, bro, at all. Everybody is spoiled nowadays. These fighters are all spoiled. And it's all to y'all man that y'all love. All of y'all owe it to y'all man that y'all love. All those guys out there, all the people that love this man.
That
y'all
man
to
being
them.
Turkey Al-Sheikh?
I ain't say nothing.
Okay.
I ain't say no names, but I'm just saying, spoiling these guys, man. These guys are making way too much money, and I get it. They all say, money. Bro, to get that, those type of performances, bro, come on, bro. No passion, no drive, no hunger. Fighters are whack, straight up whack. All of them, straight trash, whack. That was horrible to watch yesterday, man. I was so angry, man, and you can still see I'm still angry about it, because I'm like, that wasn't no boxing event. That wasn't a boxing event last night, man.
He sounds like a Premier League footballer that missed the gravy train of enormous amounts of money. Has he got a point?
Well, I think he has with A couple of the performances, I think that he has. When you're talking about Ryan Garcia and Devin Haney, and you're looking at them, and you want him to,
but you can't drag Lopez.
But you can't drag Lopez into it, and it's like, you know, it's up to the fighters to deliver. And you say, have they lost the hunger through that? It's, styles make fights. I was very disappointed in Garcia, very disappointed in Haney in their performances, but I take nothing away from Lopez.
You're right on both. He comes across as a bit bitter, but you cannot put Barbosa and Lopez in the same category as the other two fights. It's stupid. And
is he right though? Put aside the fact that he sounds like a Premier League footballer from the late 1990s that's missed the huge money that came 10 years later. But has he got some point? Because we were talking earlier on about the inflation of prices and what that's done. Everyone's nuzzled down on the teat and everyone's taking lots of money, but it has muddied the water and created outcomes that people won't fight for certain amounts of money and are getting paid a lot of money for some old rote.
Well, so take away the Lopez fight and look at the other two, okay?
Yeah.
Instead of inserting rehydration clauses in contracts, for all this money...
Performance-related.
Performance-related.
There you go.
Yeah, good point. Right, up and onward. Right, Adam, let's zero into a particular subject that will probably interest you just as much, specific to you. David Adeleye. We've got the rematch of that fight with Jeamie TKV. I wasn't impressed with the performance in the first instance. I don't think you were either. Talk to me about him. Talk to me about David Adeleye. I like him. I was critical of him for his behaviour, I thought, in the fight against Fabio Wardley when he got himself involved with things outside of the ring. And his behaviour in the ring with the referee. But ever since I've met him, I've warmed to him. I like him as a fellow. I think he's got a lot about him. I think his win that he came back from the Wardley loss was a compelling win. But I wasn't impressed with the performance against Jeamie TKV. Walk me through it.
Walk you through it. Okay, so it was a poor start by David. You know, I mean, everything is part of his evolution. He's still going to carry on to evolve to be the fighter that he's going to be. So the fight with Jeamie TKV...
But he never really got going full stop, though,
No,
did he?
well, actually, he did in the 5th round when he started walking him down. But there was 3 of the rounds where I was frustrated watching him because he wasn't doing what we talked about and drilled in the gym.
Why?
Complacency. I think he felt the lack of weight on TKV's shots and just thought, well, it's just a matter of time I'm going to get to him. But that process of being complacent and thinking, well, I'm going to get you eventually and what you're landing on me isn't troubling me, just made him look a bit behind the pace in the early rounds.
I think it's fair to say that with some fighters, you turn up and the training's all gone, perfectly, everything's falling into place, and you turn up on the night and it just doesn't happen. It's like you're walking through treacle, it's like a treacle, so you start trying too hard, you're loading up with the shots. That's what I witnessed there from Adeleye. I know this kid since an amateur, so I know the ability that he's got. And I witnessed that there and I'm going, this is not the guy that I know. Sometimes it just doesn't happen on the night. And for me, it just didn't click for him. It was like, it was one of those where he knew Jeamie TKV as well. So they've got history together. And he was over trying. It was just like loading up with the shots. And he was making those fundamental mistakes. And that's down to inexperience.
But there's the lesson.
Yeah.
There's the lesson.
Absolutely.
And it's for him now to prove to himself and to prove to me that he can go back and actually do this the way that we planned for him to do it the first
He's
time.
obviously proven enough during the first place for you to take him on, right? So that leads me to the question, okay, one bad performance doesn't define somebody. How good is he?
He can punch.
Yep.
He's got charm and a personality.
He does.
He can take a shot. He actually can take a shot. He's a good size. He's got good speed and he's an athlete. He's got all the ingredients and desire. He's got all the ingredients that you'd want as a coach for someone walking into a gym to think, right, can I maximise this fella's ability? Is he going to give me what I need? And I've really enjoyed coaching him. It took a while to get a few points across, but he has the ingredients. I believe he has the ingredients that you need to be a successful heavyweight on the world stage.
Without wanting to do a compare and contrast, I'm going to do exactly that. How does he compare to David Haye?
Hits heavier than David Haye.
Does he?
Hits heavier, definitely.
And the famed haymaker.
Doesn't have that speed impact point that David was notorious for, the explosiveness. But in saying that, he still has a lot. He's certainly closer to that than a lot of the other heavyweights out there.
What is his roadmap for the next 12 to 18 months? Because you're at that level now, at that stage. You go over old ground, Jeamie TKV. He comes through that. Where would you like to see him?
there's got to be I think what I want to see in the gym and in the fights, I think there's got to be a fast track. Deal with this fight, deal with this rematch. It's got a bit of a story behind it now. Deal with that the right way.
Conclusive.
And let's bounce on and actually start making the bigger steps through the levels, because he's at a good age, 27, coming on 28, I think. Healthy. He definitely has desire and belief, but it's about having game to go with it. And that's the one thing that I've been saying from day one. You've got all the attitude and you've got these physical abilities, but you don't have the game to go with it. We're developing the game, and which he showed in his first comeback fight against Solomon Dakers.
Yeah.
He actually showed me a lot that we've been working on in such a short space of time. And in the next fight against Jeamie TKV, he showed me nothing that we've been working on. I know he's got a left hook to put people to sleep, and I know he's got a world-class jab and he wants to use it. So, but I guess the frustration that might be energetic in my voice at the moment is the reason why I do it. If it was easy, it wouldn't be interesting.
Absolutely. Let's move on to a fascinating fight this weekend on DAZN for the IBO featherweight title between Leigh Wood and Anthony Kakachi. This is a good fight. I find it difficult to separate them. I think maybe the inactivity for Leigh Wood plays a part, but Leigh Wood digs deep all the time, whether it's against Josh Warrington or Michael Conlon or whoever else, Mauricio Lara. Where are you going with this one, Spence?
Yeah, like you, it's, you've got to go with the momentum with Anthony Kakachi, and he's a decent fighter, and we saw that, against Joe Cordina out in Saudi. You go, this kid, he's got an engine, but he's a bit of boxing IQ behind that as well. But Leigh Wood is that kid that loves it when he backs up against the wall, and he knows he's going into this one as the underdog, and he sort of feeds off that. He's one of those characters that feeds off that. I like Leigh Wood as well. But it's a real pick and fight, this one. I lean towards Kakachi, but Leigh Wood, it's difficult to go against that kid because he sort of performs under pressure.
Yeah, I've got experience with both of them in fights and in the gym. I like them both. They're both. I see them both potentially getting hurt in this fight, and then it depends on whether if Wood gets hurt and he uses his experience and his heavy hands to get back control, or whether Kakachi gets hurt and uses his closer to being in his prime. I mean, it is a brilliant matchup, fascinating matchup. I don't actually want to pick because I think they're both great young champions. It's frustrating that Leigh Wood's been out the ring for so long. That seems. I'd like to know why he's been out the ring.
That could be the deciding factor.
And if that is the deciding factor, then that's a shame on him.
Yeah.
But it is what it is.
Right, you lot, don't miss Anthony Kakachi versus Leigh Wood for the IBO featherweight title this Saturday live only on DAZN. Sign up at DAZN.com/boxing. Right, that's it for episode 119 of Talk Boxing with Simon Jordan and Spencer Oliver. Thank you very much, Adam, for joining us, and we'll see you guys next week.